Hello, everybody. Welcome to Watches with Dennis. And we are back with a live stream for Saturday. It's April 12th, 2025. And so I decided to stick with Watches and Wonders as today's theme. I was a little questioning on that, but a lot of the information that still seems to be flowing out news wise is mostly just hands on experiences with those various watches that were revealed. Obviously, had a conversation last live stream last weekend about brands that kind of were lesser known that I wanted to highlight from Watches and Wonders, but I'll be a little more judgmental today. And I want to have a conversation this time about which brands do you think won? I'm going to do my air quotes, got to do the air quotes, won Watches and Wonders. So not just like a particular model that was the best, but and a model might be enough to push a brand up in your mind to winning, but it'll be something that we'll be able to go over. I think I have a link in the show notes. I have a variety of articles that I'll use just for some just quick imagery for you guys. Hodinkee was used for all of those, but I do have the list up from Watches and Wonders. Their site is still up. They keep it up. So we can go over the brands because those of you who are participating live may have some thoughts that would be interesting for us to explore regarding what those are. But I got housekeeping to do first. So in terms of videos, I did have one video out since the last live stream, not counting remixes of as YouTube shorts of content that I did remixes of what I've just dropped in the live chat, but I did have a video out about my 10 favorite models from Watches and Wonders 2025. So that would be if it's like a new Oyster Perpetual or something, it's going to be a size, it's going to be a particular dial color. I tried to get as specific as one might be. And so because I was doing that rather than doing top 5, which was kind of my gut instinct to start with, I wanted to go ahead and broaden it up to 10 because honestly, getting it down to 5 was going to be somewhat challenging. So anyway, I do have that video out, and then I have a few YouTube shorts out from some of those watch models, just highlighting those ones in particular, particularly if I hadn't already done a video about the model, which some of them had already been touched on, such as the Tudor Burgundy Black Bay 58. So anyway, that's really it in terms of housekeeping. On the wrist today, G-Shock. I always forget the model. It's one of the solar-powered radio syncing ones. Actually wore this, finally time to mow. So I got to get it back out after I worked one day to wear for mowing. And this is my watch I do most of my outside activities with. Not planning any outside activities today other than I will probably walk to pick up lunch here after we are done streaming. But nonetheless, I figured it was a good day to wear the G-Shock. So let me get caught up with greetings from chat. Good morning, Kevin. Glad you were able to tune in. And Tuna, good morning. And thank you for being a 99-cent club member. For those that want to be club members, there is a link in the video description. There's also a link to the Discord, which does not require you to be a club member if you want to chat about wristwatches. And likewise, you can like the video somewhere down above the description and below where my head is. There's a way to like the video, which helps the video performance out. And of course, if you haven't subscribed, you can always subscribe to the channel. Anyway, probably this will be a pretty light episode. I don't expect too much intensity here. So I've picked 4 brands up front that I want to go ahead and dive into about who I think won Watches and Wonders. But I also want to give some thoughts about some brands that maybe did well or you might think had won, but I'm not saying they lost. I couldn't do it. I couldn't bring them into that winning category. So you can see the list of brands here, and some of them are going to be fairly difficult to touch on. I'm going to start with Cartier, though, as one that I couldn't do it. I couldn't move them all the way up into a winning year. And the reason I didn't is I think those Tanka guilloches that they have, well, they're too expensive, which a lot of these watches are going to be expensive. But they're very expensive for what they are. It's a very brutalist design. I know some people have compared them to bathroom scales, but I've seen the same thing regarding the other jump hours, such as from Bremont. But that was their big hurrah. And then when I saw the pricing, I just thought they priced themselves out of having a lot of success with the model, especially since I don't think there's anything really intrinsically interesting about the movements in and of themselves. And then there was the new Louis Cartier tank with a mechanical movement, which was a smart move, but hardly inspiring. And so I just didn't think, other than Cartier's got a Cartier. And of course they did something avant-garde. If you love that design, you might completely disagree with me and think they were a highlight from Watches and Wonders. Well, I thought the watches, the guilloche watches, were interesting, conceptually, there just seemed to be less there from Cartier than I think we've typically seen from Watches and Wonders. And I should go ahead and encapsulate here really quickly my general sense about the event. I know some people have pointed out there were a lot of perpetual calendars at Watches and Wonders as a theme. Stone dials, some people thought that was kind of a theme. For me, I think the theme was incremental innovation, but I think this year, 2025, was a good year for that, in the sense that I think a lot of watch buyers are probably looking more in that direction rather than a lot of avant-garde stuff. Another thing I thought was noteworthy this year versus, I felt, 2024 in particular, is a lot more of the watches were within the pantheon of affordability. And I have to use that word extremely loosely, because most of the brands that are featuring at Watches and Wonders itself are very expensive luxury brands. And so they tend to have very expensive watches. We did see these one-offs, or really high dollar things. Like I mentioned, the Tenkai Guilloches were pretty expensive for what they were in terms of materials, metals, and so forth. Likewise, Vacheron showing off its the most complicated wristwatch in history, and only making one of them and taking 8 years on it. There are still those sort of halo pieces, or just one-off pieces, piece uniques, to really highlight things. But a lot of the brands turned out stuff that, while pricey, was still within the realm that the middle class could get into it. Like stuff for like the Igeners from IWC, setting aside like the rose gold version, obtainable. Of course, Tudor had pricing that was obtainable. Rolex releasing a number of new models that at retail would be seen as obtainable. You even had Chrono Swiss's new integrated sports watch, obtainable, not an obscene price point, even though it was a limited count. It's probably not going to be that hard to get a hold of that particular watch. So last year, I felt like most of the brands were just like on the upper end of 5-figure watches, and it just seemed too much. It was like, hey, look at all this stuff that you will never get. This time it seemed more like, hey, you know what? Maybe you want to save up 5 or 10 years, but you could get one of these things. So I think that was a key point. But anyway, so Cartier, I couldn't move them to the top of a brand that I thought had won. Likewise, one I've praised on a couple of videos now, Chopard. So for me, again, this one might be polarizing. I know they had an Alpine Eagle that I think they did some stuff with the movement that made it kind of interesting, but it's sort of a blacked out watch. It looks cool, but again, the only thing that stood out to me with Chopard was the new Quattro. A nice, cleaner, more commercial Quattro, very attractive watch. I thought that the platinum Alpine Eagle was lazy. It was the most stereotypical metal move you could do with the most stereotypical dial color you could do. And honestly, the rest of the Alpine Eagle stuff, well, I didn't think was very interesting either. I just felt like Chopard really didn't bring their A game, but they still had a nice watch. So in that regard, I think they deserve to get a lot of credit for that. But as a brand, I couldn't say they won Watches and Wonders. I thought Patek had a disastrous release. If I do a video on losers for Watches and Wonders, Patek might be on that list. But regardless, they weren't going to be in contention there. Grand Seiko. This one I debated as late as this morning. I was debating putting Grand Seiko in the winner list. So again, finally introducing a micro adjust clasp, finally having some bracelet taper, but barely any bracelet taper. It's 2 millimeters, but it's there. And then a new, super high accurate spring drive movement within plus or minus 20 seconds a year. Impressive, but visually the watches made no progress. So it was the same old, here's the mountain or tree or brook or snow or whatever themes they always do, these nature themes. And you could barely see a difference with the bracelet. And I don't even know if that taper is going to be enough for a comfortability standpoint. So in the end, we have a movement that if you're into spring drive, you're into spring drive. And I would like to get another spring drive into the collection. I don't have one currently, but it's never grasped the imagination to the scale of high accuracy mechanical does. And obviously the pricing gets above high accuracy quartz. So I again, it was like they probably deserved it to be seen as a win. I just would have, I don't know. I just wanted to see something like a different, and they had no visual difference. And adding micro adjust is more of a, you should have done it a long time ago. I don't want to say, hey, congratulations for finally getting where every other brand has been for the last 20 years. So that was one that, though, that I thought was pretty debatable. IWC, I've seen some people feel IWC had a very good performance out of Watches and Wonders. The new 35 millimeter Ingenieurs, plus you had a few other iterative flavors of Ingenieur with different complication and stuff. I wasn't feeling it. They had some other like new pilot watches and things. Again, it was all fine. I just didn't think it was noteworthy. Same with JLC. You all have probably, if you've seen any of my other videos, I have praised the gold JLC rose gold one with the Milanese bracelet. That has gotten a lot of praise from a lot of people. But I could not give JLC a win when the only thing they could bring to the table were reversos. They have been leaning on reverso for the last 3 Watches and Wonders pretty heavily. But this is the first one I remember in recent memory where they only had reversos get highlighted. And they all look great, but the reverso always looks great. And so again, it's lazy, and it's just, there wasn't enough there. I know I've emphasized this sort of iterative improvement, and the market seeming to like that. And I think a lot of people felt that way about these reversos, but not for me. I just a little too boring out of them. Parmigiani, again, same sort of thing. They introduced a complication, a perpetual calendar version of the Toric. It looks great. Yet another complicated iterative change on the Tonda, but they've been doing that Tonda game for the last 5 years now. And so again, I just don't think they innovated or iterated enough to really stand out. The only thing I really liked is, well, both watches are very handsome pieces. The Toric being getting the same treatment as the Tonda and having a complication added met my bingo card of predictions or hopes to see. So, well, I was glad to see it, and it looks super clean like all Parmigiani does now. I don't think it's going to set the world on fire compared to when they first introduced the Rattrapante in the Tonda line and such. So just not enough there in my mind. And I would say those are probably the main ones that jump out to me that people may disagree with me on, that think that the brand should have been a winner, but I just couldn't get there. So I'll get to the 4 that I've picked here momentarily. But Joel Bolt, good morning. Glad you were able to join us. Tuna says, I think it kind of loses with not having Swatch. Loses, as in Watches and Wonders, is sort of a loser show, is I guess the way I'm taking this, because Swatch doesn't participate. I mean, I don't know why Swatch doesn't play ball with this, given you've got all the other major conglomerates, Swiss conglomerates at least, in play, LVMH, Richemont, and if you want to call, I mean, as much as their sales are, Hans Wilsdorf with Tudor and Rolex deserve to be in that bucket as well. Plus, you do have Grand Seiko also participate, so it's not exclusively Swiss and German brands that are playing in this pond. But yes, I think it makes it a little less interesting. That being said, we're very familiar with Omega often dropping their biggest stuff in March, or roughly a month to 6 weeks before Watches and Wonders. So I kind of feel like we if you want to do that comparison, you can. It does make the show less interesting. And I know a lot of people kind of want there to be a Basel world like there used to be, or for Watches and Wonders to become Basel world. And it's the closest thing there is to it, not counting the whole attendance factor. I know some people who've gone to both still lament that Watches and Wonders is not as exciting, interesting, whatever. I have no context. I've never been, and I didn't get into this hobby when Basel was still going on. So I don't really have much of an opinion on it. I do wish that everyone used them, because I'm thinking back to like the video games. I don't know if you all are into video games, but there used to be a big show. So from a content creator perspective, because I do podcast in mostly pinball, but we do video games as well on one of them, E3. So E3 was always this huge event for all of this news. Now, E3 was terribly managed. And people will blame E3's death on the pandemic. That just accelerated the inevitable. E3 didn't know what it was doing. It was a media event that got too expensive to get tables at. All the big players pulled the Swatch and moved out. But whereas it's only Swatch as a highlight that's not at Watches and Wonders, with E3, you saw them bleed and lose Sony, lose Nintendo. And it's like, well, once you've lost, two out of the 3 tent poles, it's very difficult to keep a show going. Anyway, that's my, Watches and Wonders seems to be able to have, I don't know if they upped the number of brands they had from 2024 or not. It felt like it was 60 last year as well. That's a good count. So I think the show is in a much better place than what I've seen a true death spiral look like. But yeah, it could be better. So Patrick with Pocket Watch Time, good morning. Glad you could be here. Underachieving Watch Collector, good morning to you as well. And Tap 1999. Hope your weekend has started off pretty decently. Okay, so let's actually get into what I'm going to pick. So again, I have some stuff. So I'm going to start with Nomos. I'm not a big fan of Nomos. I'm a fan of the brand, and I'm not a fan of the design language. And this is my one pick of my 4 winners as brands, winners of Watches and Wonders, that really only had one model that got any attention. I'm not aware if they even had anything else revealed, period. But it's the new Club Sport World Timer. Now, they did a whole slew of colors, as you can see. But the reason why this was enough of a bold move that I think they stole a lot of thunder out of Watches and Wonders. There are a lot of people talking about these watches, and I think for a variety of reasons. One, I participated last weekend on a live stream panel over with Casual Watch Reviews. It was the Casual Watch Talk stream, and I can't remember which panelist it was, but someone said it was the least looking Nomos has done. And I loved that description because I think it's very, very accurate. There are 2 things going on here that I think are very noteworthy. One is obviously the dial design. While there is a lot of familiar Nomos DNA, this is moving far enough away from their stereotypical Bauhaus look that I think a lot of people that don't resonate with the Bauhaus design in wristwatches, and I'm one of those, can start to get on board. I still don't love the numeral fonts. I still don't love the handsets that they use on the Nomos. But overall, this is improved. And I still would not buy one of these, quite frankly, but I'm trying to think about who won Watches and Wonders, not who won my heart. So they deserve credit, I think, for doing something that feels familiar but also looks different. The bigger thing for those that actually like the dial design language of Nomos, where this is not a far afield from what we've seen before when we talk about the club line, for example. It's the lug change up. So you can see in this article from Hodinkee, I'm going to try and find a good zoom in where we can get some better looks at the lugs. One of the biggest complaints from people that have handled Nomos watches or have, considered buying them is they have typically some extremely long lug designs. It's an aesthetic thing, and it goes across a bunch of their models, like the clubs, the tangentes, these super long lugs, which super long lugs can work if you have a pretty small dial. Breguet does it all the time with their classiques. Of course, we could say whether it works or not in a commercial sense, given Breguet is like on its last gasp of air as far as anyone can tell. But you can see here with this wrist shot that this is a much more traditional case and bracelet structure. The lugs look completely normal, well proportioned to the case, a sane watch configuration. I do not remember. This article may very well tell us what the lug-to-lug is. I know it's under 50 millimeters on the lug-to-lug. I think it's in the realm of like the 46 to 48 millimeter lug-to-lug. So very wearable. Thin watch. These are just under 10 millimeters thick. Overall, just a very good line. And I think one of the challenges I've always had with world timers is they can look extremely busy in the dials, but the way they've accomplished this, using the chapter ring and all the rest of it, very clean look. And they get bonus points from me, but again, that doesn't determine the brand winning. But I would give them some bonus points in the fact that they did not pull that dreadful pocket watch historic design look where you just lazily crop your way through your Arabic or Roman hour numeral markings. Instead, they actually just printed them on top of the subdial, so you don't have this cheap, disjointed cutout feel that I cannot get into that design. Like I roll out like a whole 75% of Longa Saxonias I won't even consider because they crop out the 6. I just won't. If you wanted to crop batons, I can do it. When you start cropping numerals, it just bothers me. It's just one of those things. It's a dentist thing. It's a pet peeve. But they actually, someone with Nomos must have that same feeling because they clearly took steps to not do that to their own watch. And I think it preserves the balance a lot better. But that is just my particular take. So one of the winning brands, and the only one, again, that I'm going to give you where it's only one model line that got there for me would be Nomos Glashütte and the Club Sport World Timers. It's just, there's been a lot of positive reaction to those watches. And I think it's just because they finally made some very significant improvements to what people have been after. Now, Patrick says, I don't think I've ever said the word Nomos out loud. Well, again, it's not, I'm still not there. I love their movement decoration. Another thing I will point out, which helps them on the win front, but this isn't a new thing, is Nomos is some of the best priced luxury watches in their kind of bracket where they're at. You get a lot of watch for the money, especially if you want an in-house movement. They decorate their in-house movements decently. That can't be said for everyone. I'm looking at you, Tudor. Well, I'm looking at you, webcam, but through the webcam, I'm channeling my look into Tudor, which is a good case. I actually think Nomos Glashütte has better movement decoration than most of the boilerplate Omegas do too, but Omega at least does decorate their movements. Yeah, it's just, they got a few things going for them. I just can't get into the design language. And I didn't have a problem with the long lugs. That wasn't my issue. So that, but I know a lot of people that was. So that will probably get them to a new space. So, okay. So that was one brand I thought that was worth going into. So let me jump to another one. Now, this was my pick last year. Last year, I didn't do a like brands that won Watches and Wonders. I picked one, and I picked Tudor. And that did not reflect in their balance sheet on their sales. And again, I'm not sure that this will reflect on their balance sheet in the sales, but there has been a lot of talk about Tudor. Again, some of that is Tudor gets clicks, so people will talk about Tudor and put it in the titles of the videos and stuff. I did not put it in the title this time of this video, of this live stream, but they did have a number of releases. They're getting a variety of discussion. So first one I'd say is the Pelagos Ultra. I actually think of all the ones they released that this is like the worst one, but a lot of people have been really excited about it because there is a category of sports watch, I should say professional tool watch enthusiasm that leaps into stuff that just has absurd specs. I personally don't get it intellectually, but I just know it exists. And so this, with 1,000 meters of water resistance, it's still a pretty wearable watch. I believe they kept it to 43 millimeters in diameter. It's not as thick as you might fear it would be, and it's on titanium, so it's still going to be light. That is not to say that this watch hasn't been criticized. It has definitely seen a lot of criticism, but it's getting a lot of talk, and a lot of people I have seen online like it. They like the price point of it. They like the lightness of it. They like that it doesn't have the 50,000 lines of text that Tudor sometimes does. They like the wearability of it. Main criticisms have been some of the kind of cutouts towards the rehaut that you used to see for the loom and such isn't there. So some people feel it has less personality. There's been criticism about the inclusion of the date that takes it away. That's now we're saying it's more of a desk diver rather than a real diver, even though it's got that absurd 1,000 meters of water resistance, which is in no way a desk diver necessity. So there's some polarization around some of the decisions on things like that. The watch also has received a lot of credit for the new clasp that it has. So you've got kind of like I believe this is a loomed indicator, which is just a fun little Easter egg aspect, but it's, they made some adjustments to the adjustable clasp. And so that also has, I think, gotten a lot of people excited about this watch. So this is actually, of all the stuff they did, this one, like I did barely any, well, no, when I was covering Watches and Wonders, I didn't even fully read the article on this one. I cared so little about it. It is not one for me, but it is definitely one that a lot of people have been discussing. Ducey Tap 1999 has said, heard Tudor is slowing down manufacturing to manage oversupply. I have heard that as well. In fact, my area, not about the manufacturing, but my area authorized dealer for Tudor did email me yesterday saying they did just get in the new blue Tudor and they got in the new burgundy 58 models. So, because I asked to be notified when the burgundies were in. I'm not entirely clear that they got it in on the 5-link bracelet, and I specifically said I want to know when it's on the 5-link because I want to check that one out. And so that we'll jump to that in a moment. But anyway, because I am interested that, like, that's my favorite release that Tudor did was that burgundy not looking watch. It is a burgundy watch, the burgundy watch. I did a YouTube short about this one, but I want to touch this. This goes right into that bucket of something they should have done from the get-go. But the this is quintessential Tudor. They didn't make any other improvements, so they didn't make it thinner, which a bunch of people wanted. They didn't change the bracelet to get rid of the faux rivets. So you can see the faux rivets. That's why I picked the photo here. They just made the dial white. And I don't remember. I don't think the black one has the yellow hand. I think it has a different GMT hand color. But it doesn't matter. The change is the dial color, right? But people love the Rolex Explorer 2. Well, love is relative. The Rolex Explorer 2 is one of the less popular Rolex models. But if you like the Explorer 2, you could just look secondhand. The white polar dials are worth more than the black ones. There's just always been this interest in the white dial with the Explorer 2, which is interesting to me because when you step away from dress watches, white dials tend to be less popular than black and darker colors, just in general. But this was something that people had wanted ever since the model line came out. They made zero improvements otherwise. It's just a white dial. But because it was such an obvious play, people have been talking about it because they have wanted this one for years now, and they finally get to have it. And I'm sure within 5 years, Tudor will do a new version where they finally make this thinner. It will never be as thin as the Explorer 2 because Tudor has to tutor and be subservient to Rolex. But they'll make another iterative change that people will be like, yes, you should have had that from the get-go, because they always had the technology from the get-go. But again, very positive reaction to this particular model for obvious reasons. If you like the Explorer 2, you like the stainless steel non-rotating bezel, this is going to be right up your alley, and it's going to be a lot more approachable in terms of price, especially new. So this, I'm assuming, is the blue one she meant, the Black Bay 68s. Again, this was one of those things where I think a lot of people are like, am I supposed to get excited about this? If you have a bigger wrist, you do. And if you don't care. So I don't care, but a lot of people have been talking about these two new Black Bays. So the Black Bay 68, which is not 68 millimeters in diameter, it's 43, came with a couple of versions. Both are, it's essentially the Black Bay line, the dive watch version of the Black Bay line, just a little bit bigger, 43 millimeters. Does it make a lot of sense, the name they chose? No, it does not. But that's the same with the Black Bay 58. It doesn't relate. It relates to things historically to the brand, but to the average consumer, it means nothing. Was it worth coming out with a whole new line at 2 millimeters bigger? I mean, maybe. I think the Pelagos was only 1 millimeter different from one of the other Pelagos lines. So, I mean, at least this one was a little more notable. Again, they look nice, especially the blue one. I think I've never been a fan of Tudor silver dials, but the blue one looks pretty good. If you have a larger wrist, you'll probably really resonate with it. Yes, it's confusing because the non-numbered Black Bay dive watches already had 43 millimeters. If you went bronze, they were only 41 with all the other models. So there's already been inconsistency, which doesn't make any sense to me intellectually, but it is what it is. And again, it's just one of the things where we will now in future years see more and more colorways come out for this. So it's a new size, so I think it gets a little more credit, or I will give it more credit, than something like the Black Bay Pro just coming out with a new dial color. This is more than that, but not much more. So again, they're trying to broaden their appeal, especially given that they've struggled to make the sales they have been with the existing model lines. So again, I think this was a smart play for the way where Tudor's positioned in the market. So again, this makes them, I think, contributes to their brand winning at Watches and Wonders. And then, of course, my personal favorite, but setting that aside, we have to talk a little bit about the all burgundy Black Bay 58. And it's because it's not the colorway. There will be more versions in different colorways. If you are not into this like deep cherry red look, and a lot of people aren't, this one's not going to specifically appeal to you. But it's not just the super clean look of yet another colorway in the Black Bay 58. It is the decision to finally have the 5-link bracelet, no faux rivets. Again, something people have complained about and continue to complain about in the more oyster style 3-link that they have. So you have a 5-link bracelet, which seems to suit the watch much better, at least in this colorway. Very good move there. You have the T-fit clasp, so you have a good clasp on the watch. So again, they've taken elements that people have wanted and they've combined it to finally give us a configuration of the watch which is better than the prior iterations have been. We will see this bracelet roll out over I wouldn't be surprised if we see this bracelet come out on another 58 this year. But we're going to see more and more stuff roll out with these sort of approaches. Because again, Tudor gonna tutor. And so Tudor has to iteratively innovate, giving their iterations are always somewhat frustrating to me because they're almost always, let's take something we know we should have done in the first place. I feel like Tudor deliberately makes their watches worse than they should be. Like they always have to screw something up. I think they do it on purpose. I'm not being facetious. I really think they deliberately make a design mistake in order to be able to sell a watch to the same buyer in the future by fixing that mistake. And but this year had a lot of fixes because they're very weak right now. We saw in the Morgan Stanley report, Tudor lost more ground as a percentage of turnover than any other brand they examined. And the charts only go to like the top 50, but I think they examined something like 78 brands, Swiss brands only, or pretty much. I think if they're Swiss controlled, but in Germany, I think they count too. But regardless, I'm not here to talk about Morgan Stanley, but my point is Tudor took a serious bath. They fell out of the top 20. They fell to 21st, but the ranking is sort of irrelevant compared to just the sheer turnover loss. They are in serious trouble financially, I think, moving forward. Yes, Rolex can subsidize them, but we know Rolex has Hans Willdorf Foundation, I should say more specifically. Their tolerance for that is, yeah. And I say yeah for two reasons. One, obviously, they're shutting down Karl F. Bucherer because it was not profitable. And two, we've seen them pull back Tudor before, where it basically just it wasn't operating in the US. They only brought it back in the United States in, I think, 2012. So it became a brand that was, and is still really heavily, because of this, relying on China. So they've had issues. And so this sort of thing, like what Tap has mentioned about the slowing down the manufacturing and stuff, these are all strategies because Tudor, well, I will go to my authorized dealer to check out this watch in person because I want to. I will not buy it at the authorized dealer. I don't care enough to move up my Submariner wait list to pay retail for a watch that in a year I will find on Joma Shop, or I will be able to buy used when they do the 5-link in the blue dial, and everyone who really wanted the blue dial, the 5-link, and just bought the red one because it had the, they will be dumped. The Tudors are, other than rare exceptions, like maybe those pink chronographs and stuff, they just get dumped. And so you can find great deals. So that's why I'm glad I like so much that I see out of Tudor. I don't own any Tudors right now, but I've owned 2 of them in the past, and I liked those watches. I just ended up getting, I get tired of watches and I change things up. So that's my second of 4 brands that I feel won watches and wonders. So let me go ahead and let's jump away from the Hans Willdorf Foundation, but jump into the Holy Trinity. And that's going to be Patek. It's not Vacheron. I tend to prefer Vacheron designs, but again, this isn't about my personal preferences. It's about what people have brought to the table. And the only real thing I saw people talk about with Vacheron was just the most complicated watch, which is an unobtainium piece. I don't even know they ever plan to make more than one of them. So it's really, other than the horology of it, it can be fascinating to talk about. And it was a pretty attractive looking watch too. I don't want to invest a lot of mental capital in going over watches that are truly not even the gosh, I'm blanking on. I was going to say Elon Musk, but I meant, and then I was like, I don't even know he's into watches. Then I should have said whoever, Mark Zuckerberg, the guy who owns Facebook. Like, I don't even know he could get that watch. So it's just one of those particular aspects. So Patek will be my third one. See, Patrick with Pocket Watch Time says, I'm waiting for the ceramic IWC Ingenieur to hit Joma Shop. Yes, and in my lead-in at the start of the video, I mentioned there's been a lot of praise for the Ingenieur. Releases that were shown, both the 35 millimeters and the new configurations. I've seen love for that ceramic, and I've seen love for the rose gold one, but wasn't enough to. I'm still, given the pricing that they are at retail, I couldn't put them as a win. They're close, but I just don't think they did enough. And Tap says the only brand worth paying retail are Rolex, APs, Royal Oak, and the Patek sports watches. As a general rule, Tap, I agree with you. I can't think of any exception off of the top of my head that I would name in addition to that. So I think we're in alignment there. Speaking of sports, all right. So Patek actually had a lot of releases. This is perhaps my least favorite one. Not really, actually, but close. It's my second least. Okay. So they did what they should have done from the get-go, right? Here it is, the Cubitus in 40 millimeters. It's an obvious play. I don't understand why they ever even made a cubitus in 45 millimeters, other than it's Patek, it's a sports watch, and much like what Cap said, it would have been worth it paying retail if you got the offer, because you can sell it for more, even if you absolutely hated the watch. I actually do not visually hate these 40 millimeter watches. I didn't hate the 45s visually. No, I cannot look past that it's just a squarified Nautilus. The design is incredibly lazy, but even if so many of the aspects, like the flanges, don't really make sense because it's not a porthole, and I don't really, I've never cared for the Patek date windows not color matching, which again, that's, I mean, the Vacheron's the same way. They don't like to color match their date windows, whatever, these are all personal preferences. It's just, it looks better smaller, in my opinion. And I think the bracelets look pretty good too. Again, it's a bracelet straight up from the Nautilus, so why wouldn't it be? But yeah, I mean, I like the square shape more than I like the Nautilus shape. I've never liked the Nautilus as a design. It just doesn't appeal to me. But still, we've got this well decorated. They still don't have a shaped movement for the case, and this is a brand which has done shaped movements. So it's shockingly lazy to me to this day. Nonetheless, from simply an aesthetic look, it looks decent. And this will be more popular than the 45, as it should be. There are plenty of 40-esque millimeter versions that Cartier does of their Santos. The Vacheron has for over a decade done the 1921 in a 40 millimeter. It's by far the more common version before they finally came out with a 36.5. There are a lot of people that will not, just like the new 35 millimeter Ingenieurs, there are people that will never trust a number under a certain amount. And for men, 30s going under 36 doesn't matter if the shape isn't round. It's just hard. It's mentally hard for them. They feel it's immediately feminine with that number. So I understand Patek not going super small initially with squares. 45 was absurd, though. Absolutely absurd. So anyway, it's an improvement. It's still a lazy watch, but it's an improvement. And I've heard that even the 45s draped very well, like the watch curving and stuff like that, they were comfortable. So I think these will, if anything, be even more comfortable. But I have not handled one of these, so I cannot tell you. Tap does say the only gripe with the cubitus is the round movement instead of square. Gondola, anyway. Exactly. The gondolas. Now, I know some of the gondolas, though I believe, close case back, at least all the ones I have seen, did use round movements, but they would hide it. Or you had the other ones with the display case backs, and they used the rectangular cases. I was just looking at some of those this week, in fact. And I was like, when I saw it, I was like, why not do this way? What, I mean, I know those are older watch, like the ones I saw were still Geneva hallmarked and not the new Patek. But I mean, it's just the base. I'm sure it's Patek. They could do it. It's just sad that they don't. And I bet they're going to pull a Tudor, and eventually we will see a shaped movement go into one of these watches. But I don't know. It's just a weird thing. Patrick agrees with Tap and says, make a square movement and modify the bracelet a little bit, and it's a win. I don't know if Patek's going to bring itself to modify the bracelet. Maybe eventually. But I mean, this is a brand that still got praise. Oh, I still can't believe Ben with Hodinkee did this, about that the movement here hacked. Let's not give, it's like giving Grand Seiko credit for finally adding micro adjust. Thank you for doing it, but you knew better a long time ago. And Patek knew how to hack movements a long time ago. They just didn't want to. So it's just, I don't want to give them too much praise there. Underachieving asks, how many 45 millimeter cubitus buyers will dump them for the 40 millimeter version? I think a lot, honestly, will, if they hadn't just bought them to flip them in the first place. So yes, I think a number of them will. 45 wears so large in a square configuration, unless I'd have to see it on different wrists. Here would be my general rule. If your wrist is over 8 inches in diameter, the 45 may make good sense for you. If it's under 8, I think the 40 will look better, almost assuredly. Your wrist shape may make a difference to it as well, obviously, but it's tough. Unless you, and then of course, personality. Regardless of what I think looks best, some people like big watches. And but I think most of the people who are buying and actually wearing their 45s, if they're able to get the 40 from their dealer, will flip the 45 out or trade it back or whatever. I think the 40 is going to do better. It just will. It's just a more sane number. It's a more sane number for a round watch. It definitely is for a square, though. It's not a debatable topic. Anything's debatable. I have to use some hyperbole. Patrick says, still no 40 millimeter in steel, right? No, I don't believe so. I think these are all gold. So, because they did the steel last year, but you know what? I didn't read up too closely on it. But yeah, they're both the precious metals. So because they're both the same price, 65,000 Swiss francs, which is a lot. You're paying for the brand name, obviously, in that instance. Tap says Patek is going the Cartier way: small, L, medium, and XL. Yeah, and I don't think that's a bad move, Tap. I would question ever doing a 45, but even if you were to convince me that I'm wrong and that they should have a 45 millimeter, I would never have launched at that size. That would have been of your Cartier strategy. I would have done that one last. I'd either opened with a large or a medium, done the other one second, done the small third, and done the XL last. Though, of course, in my head canon, I would never have done the XL period. I just stopped after the 3. David, thank you, by the way, for being a 99-cent club member, says, correct, no 40 millimeter in steel. Patek doesn't want to give the public a substitute to the 5711. At least not yet. No, that makes sense. Watchdog Podcast, welcome to the live stream, says, I tried on the 45 millimeter Cubitus, thought it wore great. Better than a large Santos. Okay, good for an alternate perspective. Do you want to share what your wrist size is to provide some context? Because I was taking some pretty hard takes regarding 8-inch plus. I could see the argument. Otherwise, I don't. Though I have heard that they are comfortable even in the 45. Tap says Theory Stern works in a mysterious way. He went with the biggest size first. Maybe that's the size he likes best for himself, because he's given himself a lot of credit for the design. But anyway, again, in terms of the context, not of my opinion, but just of the context of what I think, like my opinion of the watches, but what I think makes a brand win Watches and Wonders, I think coming out with the 40, there was no downside to this. This was a smart move in every way. So good move there. My least favorite watch is this one, because I don't, as a general rule, care for the Nautilus design, especially bedazzled, but they came out with a Nautilus. People are always looking and wanting more Nautili out there. Again, gold. These are gold versions, not steel. Small size, designed more for women, most likely at the 32 millimeter, but especially with the diamonds and the colorway that they've gone with. But again, people like to still Patek making clear that they're not dropping the Nautilus lineup, which I wouldn't think they would. But there've been a lot of rumors about like a complete redesign to the Aquanaut and stuff. So I think some people after the 5711 got a little leery that Patek might, quit working in the Nautilus space, maybe just run the current model lines dry until sales get low and demand is diminished, and then finally end it or something and displace it with the Cubitus. And I just think because a lot of people, unlike me, prefer these designs to the Cubitus, I think this just gives comfort to them. So I think it was a smart move, even though I don't think the watch in and of itself is particularly impressive. The rest of their releases, though, I've seen a lot more praise. So, of course, Patek has their complications. Very nice looks. There was nothing this year that to me felt like Patek was, I made a joke about this when I talked about one of the Calatravas in one of my YouTube short videos, but Patek has lately felt like they're trying to do the AP thing, right? Where they need to appeal to a younger audience. With Audemars Piguet, the way they seem to have done it is we're going to do a bunch of collaborations with a bunch of youth culture oriented designers, or we're going to play in the music space, especially like in the, they're associated a lot with rap and hip hop because a lot of those artists enjoy wearing APs. So they've kind of got that approach. It's not resonating with a lot of enthusiasts because they tend to be loud and blingy styles, or just really like they don't know who these collaborations are, or it feels weird like the Marvel collaborations feel like it diminishes the brands in the eyes of some, though those sales, those watches sell out. So, there's all that. Patek, though, fuddy-duddy Patek, feels like you have 60-year-olds guessing what they think 20-year-olds want to wear, and then they come up with like racing motif Calatravas and stuff, and alligator leather straps that are designed to look like denim, and just absurd decisions that feel like the Steve Buscemi, Saturday Night Live, hello there, fellow kids. Like it's a hello there, fellow kids brand. It feels like it's like what I would expect Breguet to come up with trying to save itself, though Breguet is in far more trouble for a variety of reasons. But it feels like Breguet just cannot be unfuddy-duddy. And I like fuddy-duddy watches in the dress watch space. And Patek kind of feels like they're trying to pivot, and every pivot they do just feels fuddy-duddy to me. And so they just have to rely on the staples. But they have a lot of nice looking watches. And I like a lot of their complication watches aesthetically, out of my price bracket, but super clean, the quadruple, complication here. Really nice execution, I think, in a lot of ways. Good colorway, looks good with the case. I've seen praise for this watch. It was, I think, broadly, it's been seen as a win. The 8-day reference, in some ways, I think I might even like this one more. I like things a little less complicated. So, I mean, you've got like the hobnail, middle flank, middle portion of the case. You've got the frosted dial. It's real easy to read at a glance. Again, it feels familiar and comfortable and looks nice. So I think it works really well. This one, because you have the kind of the translucent case work. Not a big fan of this because it reminds me of skeletonization, though it is cleaner than skeletonization. But this retrograde, a lot of people were like, "Hey, I like the retrograde date going on here." Again, they kept it really easy to read. A lot of those core design aspects, like I associate a lot of the hobnailing around on the bezel with Calatravas. But again, really clean look. This one wasn't a favorite of mine, but again, a lot of people seem to have been praising it. I know some people do not like the Calatrava Pilot travel times. I actually do. I think they look really cool. This is a very nice execution of a Pilot watch. I think it's interesting how they incidentally do this, where what do I think of this with, they didn't really crop it. People have seen me, I talked about this earlier when I was discussing Nomos. A lot of times when they put in a subdial with really large numerals, they'll crop them. This doesn't look cropped to me. It looks like they deliberately modified the fonts, but there's clear bordering around the numbers. Like I could still get behind this. I've always liked the local and home indicator on these. I just think it's kind of a quirky thing, but otherwise these kind of remind me of some of the Pilot watches, numerics and stuff, some of those really large ones from IWC and such, but I've actually preferred this to the IWC designs. So I thought this was a really good one out of them. And then, of course, my favorite release personally was a super clean, full on old man's watch, whatever. We don't care. It's here you go. Platinum, like blacked out gold indices, salmon dial, super clean with a, of course, absurd price, but also a movement designed to well fit this case. It has been a criticism of a number of the Calatravas in the past, in particular, that the movements are a little too small for the cases. And well, I don't think they were absurdly too small when you looked at them from the back. When you look at them from the front, some people felt that the small seconds was too close to the center of the dial. That issue is resolved here. And so I think this was easily my favorite watch. This is an incredibly good looking watch. I would probably be more interested seeing if they come out with this look, but in white gold, because then it will be, somewhere probably between 30 and 40,000, and not the what was it, like 47,000 Swiss francs or something, 40,000 Swiss francs. So, but anyway, I thought this, again, they can't just do stuff like this. This is too old fashioned, but that they actually showed some respect to the Calatrava line and said, we know what our roots are. Let's go ahead and put out something like it. And honestly, this is one of the best salmon dials I have seen. Sometimes I think salmon tends to get a little too red. It depends on the watch look, but the way they looked at this looks very competently designed. I thought this was very nice. And if you don't like the hobnail dial bezel, because there's not a timelessness necessarily to that. It can feel dated. I guess it sort of depends on what the trend is. Here you go, smooth bezel, so you don't even have to deal with that if you think that makes the watch too busy. Because again, while I'm not a huge fan of like the Young House and Nomos Glashütte Bauhaus designs, the Bauhaus-esque design of the Calatrava, I do like. This is a sort of super clean style that I'm always torn between this and the Vacheron Constantin Traditionals. In some ways, I prefer the traditionals because I think the handset is a little better. And sometimes I like what they do with the casework a little bit more. But I generally prefer the baton style of the Pateks, and some of the dial work tends to click with me a little bit better on the. It just depends on the model. But anyway, I really like this. So overall, I think Patek did great. Like even though most of the watches wouldn't be my style of watch, I think they had a really good. They came out with the Cubitus in a proper size, the size they should have launched with. They still did another Nautilus, okay, oriented towards women. Probably a lot of people weren't really talking about it, but it's showing that the commitment to the Nautilus hasn't gone away. Then a bunch of complications and two pretty good looking Calatravas. I think they showed that they aren't going to just be fake blue jeans and fake racing dials and just stupid 20 somethings that can't even afford their watches with these just far-flung appeals. That I'm confident Patek has not abandoned that. But it was good to see Watches and Wonders was a breath of fresh air that wasn't this hello fellow kids approach. And I don't want to just say people win for not losing, but the watches they did show looked good. So I viewed it as a pretty big win. All right, I'm going to try and get caught up with the chat because holy cow, you guys did have thoughts when it came to Patek. So Watchdog Podcast noticed his wrist's only 7 inches and he liked the 45. Okay, good to know. Short lug to lug. Truly a watch you can't judge on dimensions. Have to try it on. Very fair point. And I've not done a lot in looking at the lug to lug, though I had read it when the watch came out and I knew it wouldn't overhang. I knew that. It's just a square just feels very big. It just occupies. It's very showy, I guess, would be my thing. But if you're into it, you're into it. Tap says, speaking of Cartier, I need a Privé. They are becoming my favorite brand. Tap says, regarding Patek, I still don't get the racing dial Calatrava. I don't hate the dial texture, texture that they did, but again, with a non-color match date window, and why racing? What Calatrava and racing don't like? Again, to me, it was like what they did with the Cubitus. Why not make it its own new line? Why does it have to infect my Calatrava line, my precious Calatrava line? Why infect it with that? Why not make a new race Trava or something? I don't know. Be creative about it. Make it something different. So, because there's nothing about the Calatrava DNA. I look at those watches and I don't see Calatrava at all. And when I see it in the Calatrava model line, I get confused. It's kind of like where we had instances in the past of Vacheron malts. I love the Vacheron malt. It's one of my favorite tonneau shaped cases. At one point early on, the malts were not just tonneau shaped. They did other shapes. They had round shapes. And I think Vacheron was like, this is confusing. The malt will just be tonneau. And so that's what they've done. Same with with the gondolas from Patek. Those are rectangular watches in my head. I don't think they all were when you look across the entire collection, but towards the end, I believe they all were. They were all rectangular style watches, rectangular or tonneau, but not round. So, like, we want themes that plebes like me can understand. Like, we need to be able to understand what the heck's going on. So, anyway, my thought. Patrick agrees that racing plus Calatrava doesn't make any sense. Joel is with me on hating cropped numerals. Koji loves the look of the 6169P, but the price is a sad little fart in the wind. I don't really know what all those symbols are, but that's what I've translated it to be. Tap says the 6119 might be a cheaper model line. And Underachieving says the Platinum Calatrava is great, and I'd wear it if someone bought it for me. Well, just start up a Patreon and see if you can get enough people. I knew someone in the pinball space who did that. They started up a Patreon for people to give them enough money to buy a new pinball machine. And they get nearly enough to buy the machine, but some people, I suppose as a joke, did actually send in some money to them. Okay. Fourth and final brand that I feel won Watches and Wonders this year. I saved the most popular brand in the industry for last. A brand that I don't think I've ever said has won Watches and Wonders before, but I have to this year, and that would be Rolex. So starting off, the Land Dweller. Love it or hate it, Rolex didn't just iterate. Yes, there's a lot of their DNA that you see combined in this. You see a lot I know a lot of reference to for the case shape and the integrated style is going to make almost anyone who knows about oyster quartz feel like oyster quartz. Yes, those that have the Arabic numerals at the 6 and the 9, even though the font on them is a little bit different, it's almost impossible not to feel like they took them from the Explorer. The date decision to have the Cyclops date at 3 o'clock and fluted bezels is going to make people think about date just. It's just unavoidable. And then, of course, Rolex bracelet, going to Rolex bracelet. So, nonetheless, even if you hated everything I just said about the watch, the movement of the watch itself has been extremely interesting. So, this whole new Dynapulse escapement system, the heavy use of silicon in the model, the high level of anti-magnetism, the engineering of going to the natural escapement process, which to my knowledge has only been done sporadically in some fairly handcrafted watch work done from some of the high-end independents. To see a mega brand like Rolex say that they have finally figured out how to mass produce it is pretty exciting. Yes, there are going to be people, purists, traditionalists is maybe a better way to say it than purists, that will hate this movement. They will hate that it uses so much silicon. They will hate that it's 5 hertz. I mean, we know, I mean, no shade meant, but like Watch Art Sai, for example, I know he's really big into 3 hertz movements, not higher end movements. He doesn't like silicon balances. Like, this is a movement that I assume, I've not gone and checked out his channel to see if he's had thoughts on this recently. I would assume he does not care for this movement for a variety of reasons. However, from an accuracy standpoint, from a performance standpoint, from a maintenance standpoint, if everything Rolex is claiming is true, this movement is a massive win for a company that's already very successful. That is a massive win. This, in my mind, took I'll be kind to say a big dump all over coaxial, which I have, full bias disclosed aside, I have never been particularly impressed by coaxial. I think you're looking at a movement that's very thick. You're looking at a balance or escapement system that is supposed to reduce wear, but you don't have Omega promoting really long service intervals of 10 years. And Rolex was doing that before this particular watch. And this is thin. This is a thin watch. So because this is a thin movement and it's attractively decorated, better decorated than the standard Omegas are, by far better decorated. So do I love the design? Not really. I don't hate it. I don't like the ones having the numerals from the Explorer. I think that's just one too many magpie hodgepodge together. Like almost everyone I've had conversations with, I do not like this approach to the honeycomb dial, but I'm sure they'll move away from doing that in future runs. I just think it made it too weird. I think it looks too blingy in photos with that honeycomb, with this fluted bezel, and with this new bracelet. I'd like to try on the bracelet because Rolex's bracelets have always been great, and I bet this bracelet wears really well. I'm curious if I could try a Cubitus bracelet to find out if Rolex's bracelet is more comfortable than the bracelet on the Cubitus, which of course is the same bracelet as the Nautilus. I've heard good things about the Nautilus bracelet, but buyers of Rolex and Patek Nautili are like those are two different pawns. So case in point, they're not the same price bracket, I guess where I'm going. So I don't think Rolex has the best bracelet in the game. I think Parmigiani has a better bracelet than Rolex does, but Parmigiani is also like another $10,000 retail compared to where you're going, almost 20, honestly, versus starter Rolex when you think about like Oyster Perpetual. So anyway, my point being though, that I fully expected this to be an extremely wearable watch, that it's under 10 millimeters thick, that has around 60 hours of power reserve with a 5 hertz movement, which also helps them keep that accuracy level so high because it's able to self-correct as it's moved around much faster than a 4 hertz movement would. There's just so much there that this, again, would be a model alone that probably could have given them the category of, I mean, they stole the thunder of just about everyone, showing that they had rolled out mass-produced natural escapements. And I think we're going to start seeing these movements drop into other models that they have. In fact, I think from a sizing perspective, the movement is designed to basically be interchangeable, I believe. I've not looked too much into that because I'm not going to be swapping movements around. So I don't care all that much about that aspect. Let me jump into the other ones. I see the chat has been active, but I'm going to jump into other, but that's not the only thing. So, okay. Slew of new color approaches, dial stuff on by slew, yeah, like 8, I think. New dial configurations or dial colorways for Daytonas, which those always appeal to certain people. I don't think they're all winners. Case in point, I think this gold one with the like Tiffany blue here is not a very attractive watch. But hey, I'm not the one buying it. So again, that's the sort of iterative stuff we expect out of Rolex. And so people that want that sort of thing, I think we're pretty pleased. This for me was probably the biggest miss. But I know a lot of people have been trying to buy the sprites, and it's been hard to get. People like having that configuration with the crown on the left-hand side of the watch. And I think there's a lot of people who want to still wear it on the left wrist. They just don't want the crown to have to poke into their hand when they flex it, which, hey, isn't a bad reason. So this one, I just think's a lot of green. It feels very hulky to me, which the Hulk until later years wasn't that popular of a watch, as I recall. But anyway, it's in white gold too, so I don't see this as the same hit success. But some people might be keen on it. This though was, and I've talked about the green one in particular, but Rolex, I thought this was a really smart pivot. Let's move away from, and they haven't eliminated all of them, but let's move away from the bright, vibrant Stella colors, and let's now go much more muted, but not like the 2015 to 2020 sunburst muted, like the red grape and the emerald green and the black with sunburst style. Instead, let's do pastels, but pretty subtle. So, like a lavender, a pistachio, a sand. Pistachio and the sand I like the most. I'm not big into purple, so the lavender is not surprisingly not all that interesting to me, but clean configurations. The lacquer on these look really nice. And it'll be debatable. I think some will say these colors aren't going to pair as well as more neutral colors. I would agree with that. Are they timeless? I don't know, but I thought the Stella dials were too loud for you, and for me they were. These are more appealing. I think this lacquer look suits the Oyster Perpetual very well, and I think these will do pretty well for them. So I thought this was a really smart release of a good iterative change, but it's very just like looking at them, you see it very easily. And then this, well, it wasn't for me. I saw way more praise about this than anything else. So they've been trying to get the 1908 to catch on. They put out the gold one the first year. Reaction was positive, but again, my full on Dennis bias. It felt to me like it was a bunch of people who have always looked at Rolex for their sports watch line and haven't seriously shopped dress watches, because Rolex was well positioned pricing where other more prestigious brands were. So it was like, yeah, you could get a Rolex 1908, but especially if you're willing to entertain used market stuff, it's like you could get Vacherons for less, you could get Longas for less, especially at the time when they rolled out the 1908. The assumption was if Rolex doesn't see a big value drop on these secondhand, I mean, other than the Patek Calatravas probably still costing more, you basically get any other major dress watch, JLC, there's just a lot of competition in the space. Then last year they did the platinum one, and a lot of people liked the platinum one more. I still didn't care for the dial configuration. I still feel the logo and the numerals and the handset positioning versus the logoing at the 12 o'clock looks weird to me, looks unbalanced to me. However, by and large, the platinum looked better. Even to me, it looked better. Even with the stereotypical blue dial that you get with platinum, looked better. But this, a lot of people really love the look of this gold watch on the gold bracelet. And I think the reason is, unlike traditional dress watches where leather is the expectation that the watch comes on, we know Rolex has a very top-notch game. And when you think about gold bracelet, full gold watches, it's like there's Rolex, and then there's not a lot of other stuff that readily jumps to my mind. Like the second brand that comes to my mind that does a whole lot of gold bracelet work is Vacheron. And then it gets more sporadic. Yeah, you've got the gold versions of like the Nautilus and stuff, but again, the price points start to get up there. The Alpine Eagles have some. There are others that are starting to play more in the space. Even Breitling and such have started to do a lot more options where you sort of have these halo pieces in gold, full gold. But a lot of people looked at this, and Rolex on gold bracelet is some of the retail most competitive pricing. Like, they do not upcharge you the same way other brands do. They upcharge you, but it's not nearly as absurd as some other brands seem to think that gold should command. So I was a little surprised because it's still basically the same watch, but a lot of people, when they saw it on gold bracelet, I think that put them more in the Rolex mindset. I think seeing the watches on leather isn't working for the typical Rolex buyer. The typical Rolex buyer is not really a dress watch person. They might think a date. These are the people that think day dates and date justs are true dress watches. You can wear them that way. I'm not gonna argue with you about it, but that's not what's meant typically by enthusiasts when we say dress watch. So anyway, it just played more into Rolex's strength, and I think it was a smart move. So because of the new movement, the new model line, and the move to kind of Rolexify the 1908 more and not double down on the Cellini-ness of it, those would be the main reasons to go ahead and say Rolex won. As well, was my fourth brand to win Watches and Wonders. But I also think the OPs in particular were a really smart play, and I know a lot of people will. They're just Daytona collectors, and they're gonna eat up those 8 new dials, at least some of them. So anyway, that was my last brand that I wanted to go ahead and mention. All right. Tap says Patreon for a Patek, link for first world problems. If it didn't look so obscenely tone deaf, I would be tempted to do it just for the lulz, but then I would feel guilty if people actually sent in money. I'd much rather you just join the 99-cent club and not feel like you're going to purchase me some absurdly expensive platinum Patek. Ken, welcome to the live stream, Ken. If Rolex does this right and keeps Land Dweller limited, they could make a huge dent in Audemars Piguet, as it has better sizing, half the recommended retail price, and nobody's going to complain about buying a sub to get a Land Dweller. Those are all good points. I hadn't really thought exactly what it might be designed to take out. Like if Rolex sat there going, what could we do to take out something in the integrated sports space? And that maybe they target AP. The pricing is so much better. I see where you're going, yeah, because of the limited structure of it. Well, we'll have to see. It's too early, I feel, to know. Like, I'm confident Rolex has every intention to continue to do like titanium Yachtmasters and stuff in super limited quantities, just like Daytonas are designed to be. That's part of the reason they like turn out, here's 8 new dials, because they only make a few of, you want people that are buying precious metal Daytonas to feel special. And the key way to do that, while still actually selling way more Daytonas than I think most people realize they sell, is by doing a whole bunch of different dials. And so then the likelihood of you ever meeting someone else with the same exact configuration is pretty low. It's a really smart play. I could see that, I guess, for the Land Dweller. I don't know yet, other than the initial just hype for a new thing. And we got a Rolex Bro's got a Rolex Bro. The key will be when they come out with better looking dials than that honeycomb. But I'm confident Rolex will not just do honeycomb for that watch. They have way better looking dials just in the catalog that can easily be Land Dweller-fied to make it a better looking watch. So we'll see. Tap says, I'm impressed with Rolex's high speed movement. That's impressive. It's a serious engineering feat. I honestly, Grand Seiko with that new spring drive within the 20 seconds a year accuracy probably could have gotten a lot more attention if Rolex hadn't just come in with natural escapement and just sabotaged all other movement discussion. And it's not just that it's the name Rolex. Being able to mass produce that technology is a big deal. And spring drive was a big deal, but spring drive's been out for like 20 plus years now. So just iterative improvement on spring drive, significant iterative improvement, because I think before then the best spring drive movement was within 15 seconds a month. It's just not enough. It just wasn't. I almost felt bad for Grand Seiko, but hey, there's winners and losers for a reason. Let me do this first one, Koji, and then I'll do your next one. Koji says, I think this is also a lot of brand optics. Omega comes out with Spyrite, which achieves accuracy higher than Dynapulse. But since Dynapulse was created by Rolex, it will automatically be perceived as being more legitimate by buyers.
This is Rolex trying to predict the next marketing zeitgeist of watchmaking, in my opinion. A good point. But I do want to point out with Omega and Spyrate, to my knowledge, they haven't put it in anything other than that one model, not model line, that one model of a design that wasn't that popular. It was a super expensive watch, more as I recall, than what the Land Dweller is at retail. And there was only one flavor of it. And here you go with Land Dweller, which had 3 different dial configurations, and comes in, while expensive. I mean, we're still talking like sub Sky Dweller price at retail for the Land Dweller. Yes, it's a significant uptick over the date just that it kind of looks like, but Omega's pricing its this is not a Swatch episode, but Omega and Swatch Group's management of them, I feel maybe I need to do a video on it. I almost feel like they're pricing themselves out of their own customers at this point with their strategy, and they still have the entry level stuff, but the entries, no, at least in the US, people aren't going out there wanting a bunch of DeVilles. They want Speedmasters and Seamasters, and they want the cool new looking stuff. It just doesn't make logical sense to the average buyer when you come out with a Seamaster that's smaller with no date complication, and somehow it's more than the ones with the higher complicated movement. It doesn't make any sense. Anyway, yes, it's I think Rolex is predicting it better than Omega. Let's put it that way. Also, Omega, the coaxial is getting really long in the tooth. And I think a lot of us, myself included, thought Spyrate would have been in more stuff by now, and it's not. And we thought the price would come down more by now, and it hasn't. And so I don't think Omega's managing Spyrate properly, but they could pivot. It's not too late. I mean, Omega's a big brand. David says, Rolex bracelets with micro adjustment are the best in the business. Parmigiani Fleurier and Chopard desperately need micro adjustment. I do wish my Parmigiani had micro adjustment because I've dropped some weight since like January. And so now the watch is a little loose. And so I've started to have the crown hit my hand more. But I don't think I'm enough to pull another partial link out. I have to take a look. And Chopard, excellent bracelet design in and of itself. But yes, it would be micro adjust, obviously. Makes the world a better play. It makes us happier. Our wrists, well, they change sizes all the time. And being able to be flexible about that, or at least do something like Zodiac. I've praised Zodiac bracelets before because their butterfly clasps still have a little, almost like an elastic give. That's enough to deal with most wrist swelling. So you can get them really comfortable. But that being said, I feel like in the hand, you're saying the clasp aside, Parmigiani's bracelet is outright better than Rolex. It's silky would be the way I would describe it, in steel. And I've trying to think. I've handled Chopard once before, but I'd like to experience again. But I've heard others report Chopard has very little link play. So, like robustness wise, Chopard is purportedly one of the top in the game. I haven't handled it enough to be able to fully commit on saying that. Koji says those pastel dials are quite gorgeous. Tap says, back to David's comment about Glamour & Seiko finally making micro adjust bracelets. That was the biggest thing, yes. But they have not immediately committed to going and throwing those clasps on the rest of their catalog. And I'm not surprised that they didn't, but again, that's what people wanted. So one of those things. Ken says there weren't enough Grail Daytonas after the price increase. Hence, they had to re-release the colors and meteorites. Koji says, that's a very good point regarding Omega to me. Well, thank you. I try and make at least a few good points. But all right, that's it for the live stream. So those are my picks for winners of Watches and Wonders. I do plan to be back with a live stream next Saturday. I have not picked the topic yet. I will try not to have it be a Watches and Wonders topic. I need to go through and start trying to build the this or that around the Watches and Wonders releases and such. I have not started the work on that yet. Unfortunately, I've been really busy work-wise. And so when I get home, I've been, well, it's a combination exhausted, but also with Watches and Wonders, I still had, a lot of those videos I wanted to put out. So I've had a lot of stuff, especially some, I played around more with the YouTube shorts, trying to do remixes of the longer form things, just because I'm able to do that sitting down on the couch with my cell phone. So it's all about being lazy. That's my gig. But hey, with a small channel like this, that's what you get. But anyway, I appreciate everyone who's able to join in live. Those of you who haven't, comment below about which brands you think kind of won overall as brands, Watches and Wonders. You don't just have to pick one. You can be like me and cheat and pick multiple. But that's it for this video, everybody. I hope you have a good weekend, and I will talk to you all on the next one. Take care.